Hello, welcome to Bennetts BikeSocial. This is Yamaha's high-tech premium sports tourer. It's got a big name, hasn't it, Steve? It's the Tracer 9 GT Y-AMT. Be really good at a game of Scrabble, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Anyway, we've ridden it, haven't we, between us? You've done the majority of the, how many months?
Yeah, I've done about 1,400 miles now.
1,400 miles. I've been sent to Coventry and back on it, which I think was probably about 120 or so. So between us, we can kind of discuss the pros and cons about this 2025 Yamaha machine.
Hold on, we should, oh damn it, we should say the bit about Bennetts that we did at the end, that we were meant to put in at the beginning, that we can then edit to put in the beginning. Now, as ever, thank you for Bennetts, because Bennetts allows us to do this, and it's important that, you know, we get paid a wage to do this. We don't have to have adverse or influence or anything like that. We can just make the reviews that we want to make, and if we want to say it's ugly, we can say it's ugly.
Correct.
Because we get paid to do it rather than rely on an advertiser. And we're very grateful to Bennetts to do that. And Bennetts don't do that for fun. Bennetts do that because they think, you know, they want people to get more out of motorcycling by being with Bennetts.
And therefore, you should join us on Bennetts Bike Club, which is our own social media website. We've also got a Facebook group, which is called BikeSocial. There's over 10,000 there, isn't there, now? Or, of course, be a BikeSocial member, and that's free. So you get access. It's free if you insure your bike directly with Bennetts, so you get access to well over 150 different types of rewards, discounts, benefits, and offers. Well, it's packed full of bells and whistles, Steve. It's I think it's been described as one of the most technologically advanced Yamahas or even bikes.
It's a really interesting bike because it's got all the current kit, you know, all the stuff that people talk about the state-of-the-art motorcycling tech. It's got, and what's unusual about this bike is it's got all that kit, and it's not a heavyweight touring bike. It's a kind of middleweight sports touring bike. You know, it's normally, if you want radar and you want those kind of semi-auto gearboxes and you want all the kind of electronic suspension and all that stuff, you're looking at big BMWs, big KTMs that are all sort of very much the touring end of motorcycling. This still feels like a sporty, you know, almost a super bike. It's got that lovely thing, you know, that engine in the MT-09 feels like a real sort of lively, you know, just kind of gutsy, hooligan-y type of engine. In the R9, it still feels like a really sporty engine. You've ridden the R9 more than I have. But in this, it manages to do all that. It can still be that sporty, aggressive, way kind of engine. But also, when your head's in touring mode and you're just kind of slogging out the motorway miles, it sits there at 70, 75, 80, whatever your motorway speed is, and just kind of crushes the miles.
Yeah, and comfort too, isn't it? It's a lovely thing. The engine itself has been used across Yamaha's range, hasn't it? Because it's, like you said, it's MT-09, it's in the R9, and it's been used in this for some years. But it's Euro 5 plus friendly now, isn't it, for this particular one? So this is a 2025 bike.
Yeah, and I can't remember. They didn't do a lot to it, but I think it makes the same power and the same torque as it did pre-Euro 5 plus.
Yeah. So it's about 117 brake horsepower, approximately.
Yeah.
I think that peaks at, I say it like I've remembered it, and I've got it written down right in front of me, 10,000 RPM, and peak torque 93 Newton meters at 7,000 RPM, if you're interested in facts and figures. My first reaction, and I'm jumping way ahead here, my first reaction to this was how I'm familiar with this engine, this particular engine as well. Like you said, we're in the R9 quite a bit during 2025, and always had a special place in my heart for the MT-09. In fact, the whole series, I did the original launch for this over 10 years ago when it was known as the Tracer 900. Even more digits. Mind you, didn't have Y-AMT after it then. But I've always been fond of the engine. I think that there can't be anybody around there who doesn't love a CP3, a cross-plane triple. I couldn't really feel all the benefits of it in this particular chassis.
It's a really, you know, it's a really strange thing. We're recording this at the end of February, and I think in the 1,400 miles that I've done, there's probably about 10% of those have been done in the dry, and the rest of them have been done in pretty horrendous weather. And so my time exploring the sportier side of this bike has been fairly limited. But I know what you mean. I've spent a lot of time cruising down the motorways on it. It almost feels like a maxi scooter. I hate to say it, but and especially with the gearbox, when you've got the gearbox in auto mode, it almost feels like the world's fastest, sportiest maxi scooter. It's quite capable of not being excited, of just being that bike, like I said, that just slogs out the mile.
Yeah.
But when you do need to, I had one blast down my the favourite local road down where I am, and just had it in manual mode, and the roads were dry enough, and I know the road, and just went and you just remember then what this engine can do. And I think the interesting thing about it is when you look at the numbers. So at the moment, you've got things like the Kawasaki Versys 1100, bigger bike, bit more torque, bit more power. You've got this Honda CB1000 GT coming this year, which is, considerably more powerful. But this never feels like it hasn't got enough power. It just feels like they've said, here's as fast as it needs to go. We'll make it go that fast. We don't need to have this massive envelope of speed that you're never going to use. Here's how fast we know you're going to go. Here's how lovely it can be when you're cruising around. Here's how good it can be in town. It's just enough. And I remember Yamaha said to us with the R9, didn't they? They said they could have given the R9 20 more horsepower, but they didn't. They chose, they said, we'll make it so it's a nice engine, easy to use, flexible, versatile. They've managed that with this, even more so.
With the inline triple having all the benefits of a twin and a four almost. So you've got that the breadth of power and the breadth of torque, and it makes it really versatile.
I tell you, the other thing that intrigues me with this is you're old enough to remember the start of this. I'm old enough to remember when BMW launched their K75 100 years ago, and I know the whole marketing campaign for that bike, because they had the K100, which had a reputation for being a bit vibey. And they launched the 3-cylinder K75, and the whole advertising campaign was how smooth it was. With all its 3 cylinders, it's the smoothest thing. They ignored the fact that at the same time, Laverda had a reputation for making 3-cylinder bikes that went bah. And this is like halfway between the Laverda and the BMW. This is smooth enough, and when you're riding it, it feels very smooth. But when you're on the motorway, again, motorway speeds, if you stop holding the handlebar and you hold on to here, outside of the bar end weight, you can feel a lot of vibes coming through that.
Through the handguard?
Yeah, you can feel it on there. On the handlebar.
They've all been engineered out.
So you don't feel it as a rider. But they are there, which is interesting. 3-cylinder bikes don't have to be smooth. Triumph, a good example.
Yes.
Triples. They've never yet marketed any of their bikes as being, it's so smooth, it's a triple. They almost engineer the opposite into them, don't they?
Exciting, I think is a word that's used. We're way off script already, obviously. I'd planned this so we were going to talk about it like we have a bike review on BikeSocial, so it was a bit more formulaic. But should we try and get back to being on point? So price-wise, this is the Halo bike, isn't it? This particular one we've got right here is the pinnacle. The range starts at just over £11,000. You can have it in red or black, and it's got pretty much no bells or whistles.
It's got manually adjusted suspension, I think, rather than the electronic suspension. It's got a manually adjusted screen that doesn't go up as far up and down as far as the electric one does. It's got things like optional heated grips, whereas this and the GT have got standard heated grips. Doesn't have the connectivity. It doesn't have panniers as standard. Doesn't have the option of Y-AMT. But it's pretty good price.
Yeah, for just over 11, that's very competitive, especially with the likes of the new CB1000 GT that you mentioned earlier on. It hikes up to the GT, and that's just a shade under £14,000, or you can have it with the Y-AMT gearbox. So does that stand for Yamaha's automated manual transmission?
Yeah.
And that's an extra £1,000 on top. So now we're up to just under 15, and then this.
And the difference between this and the standard GT is, I think, this has got the radar. It's
front and back, hasn't it?
Front and back. It's got Y-AMT as standard. It's got the same electronic suspension, but the suspension on this is linked to the Y-AMT. So it...
Depending on what riding mode you're in?
Yeah. Yeah. So the semi-active element of this works across all the Y-AMT modes as well. And the difference, again, I think, between this bike and the previous version. The previous version had radar in the front, didn't have radar in the back. So radar in front gives you the active cruise control, which is really good on this, really good. The radar in the back now gives you the blind spot. So you've got little warnings in the mirrors. And again, they're really useful. I remember these when we had the 1300 GS on test. That's the first bike I've ridden with them, and it's a really useful system because motorbike mirrors aren't always great, and motorbike mirrors when the rider's wearing an enormous textile suit with shoulders that come out here are always great. And it's just having that notification, just that little thing that there's something there.
The extra split second of safety, I think it's a nice thing to have. I wanted to just touch on what's known as the unified brake system.
Yeah, this is it.
And that's only on the GT Plus, is that right?
I think so, yeah.
Because of that front radar.
Yeah, it's linked to the radar. And again, that's something that it's linked to the cruise control. If the system detects that there's a vehicle in front that's going slower than you are, and you brake, but it doesn't think you're braking hard enough that you're going to avoid that, it adds more brake. So if you're not braking, it doesn't apply the brakes. It doesn't. You're not riding along, and it suddenly brakes. It applies more brake if you're already braking. And
have you felt that? Have you ever used it, or has it ever happened?
I've tried testing it, but testing it intentionally isn't the same because you go charging up behind something and you're already braking. The fact there's something, and the fact you're already braking somehow, you brake harder than you would, I think. And so I think the only time you would test it is actually if it kicked in, and you wouldn't. It's really hard to test it manually.
So for just in case. And is there any alert that comes up on the screen?
The screen goes bright orange, and the whole TFT lights up and kind of goes danger, danger, danger. A bit like the GS does, I say, the BMW TFTs do with the radar do exactly the same.
The majority of the miles that you've done on it are your commute here, which is nearest damn 150 miles, isn't it, each way?
Yeah.
And therefore it's all the majority of motorways, or have you had a chance to?
I know I've got 2 or 3 ways I can come to work, and depending on the weather, which I say hasn't been great while we've been testing it, I can either do kind of a short run where there's kind of more twisty roads, a longer version. I try and get a mixture of fast A roads where you're doing lots of overtaking, because I think that's how nimble a bike is actually about how it handles. Handling isn't just about lean angles, and handling is about how a bike can nip in and out of traffic and all sorts of things for me. I really like it. I'm always aware that the panniers, although the panniers probably aren't that much wider than the handlebars, the panniers seem to stick out a long way when you look at it from the back, and I'm always aware of the panniers. So that limits your kind of exuberance perhaps when you feel through. It feels small and light, compared to adventure bike. The seat's reasonably low. The seat's very comfortable.
It's adjustable too, right?
Yeah, and
2 settings.
Yeah, and I think actually the seat on this is higher than the previous model.
Yeah.
But the shape of it is different. So your step over is your foot to foot is lower than on the previous model. Yeah, it's adjustable. I think 845 to 860 millimeters. The subframe this year is longer, so there's more room, more space for a pillion. It's a really comfortable bike to be on. And the big difference, I think, between this model and previous models, Tracer 9s used to be, you couldn't review one without talking about the screen. They had this thing about, there's a lot of people had problems with the screen and turbulence buffeting. The GT Plus and the GT have got a tall screen, and on full setting, on full height, this is great. I mean, you can ride with the visor up on this. I set off one morning from the previous day had been absolutely chucking it down. My helmet was soaked. All that thing where the bottom of your helmet is all soaked. I put it on and set off, pulled the visor down, and my pin lock just went and just fogged instantly. Obviously, somehow the sealer that was damaged at least. I had to do 150 miles with the pin lock fog, so I basically had to do 150 miles with the visor up and on the motorway. And this, with the screen fully up, I could do sort of 10 minutes at a time with the visor fully up, motorway speeds, and then it'd clear a bit and then pull it down, do 5 minutes at the down. And I was really impressed with that.
Is it its highest position right now?
Yes.
It's on its side stand, just so you know. But perhaps we'll demonstrate how quickly it goes up and down as well, because it's all obviously adjustable via the switch go on the left hand side. But it's actually shaped nicely as well. Again, the one big trip I did to Coventry from Peterborough and back was a cold day. It wasn't. I don't think there was any kind of rain around, but I remember being obviously dressed for the occasion, making full use of the heated seats and heated grips, but being impressed with the screen and how much protection from that cold air that I had.
And the heated grips, the heated seat is optional on this. The grips are standard, but the grips and the seat are very good, aren't they? I mean, they're really on full setting. They're really warm, and interestingly, they've got you can go in, the menus on this are crazy. There's so much adjustability on it. You can go into menus that adjust, you can adjust the kind of the lift control, traction control. You can adjust the suspension from the onboard settings. You can adjust on the heated grips, the heated seat. There are 3 preset levels, but you can program the presets from 10 levels of heat. And obviously, because we're blokes, you just program everything on maximum, and because we can't help ourselves. And it's so hot. I manage about half an hour with the heated seat on maximum, and then I have to turn it down or stand up.
Same for me with the heated grips. I think you'd pre-program setting 3 as 10 out of 10, like the maximum. And that's what you could cook an egg on there.
There's a little cubbyhole on the side, and again on this there's a USB-C port on there. Oh, no, so USB-A port in there. But you get a phone in there. You can connect your phone via the Garmin Motorize app.
Ah, yes.
And you can listen to music if that's the kind of thing you want to do. You can do all the stuff you can do with general connectivity. The Garmin app obviously allows you to do navigation. The man from Yamaha, when we collected the bike, spent 50 minutes talking me through all the functions, all the nav, pairing my phone. Obviously, within 5 minutes of leaving Yamaha, I'd forgotten how to do it all. I have to hold my hand up and say I haven't managed to use the navigation app, but that's me. I rarely manage to use any navigation apps. I can use CarPlay in my car. That's about the limit. If you buy one of these, if you spend £16,500 on one of these, you will get the man in the Yamaha shop to show you exactly the amount for it. And if you forget, you'll go back and ask him to remind you to do it, because you've given him £16,500 and he loves you.
I'm glad you talked about the price, because that's something we didn't get to in the price section. We didn't actually get to the price of this one. So that's 16,604 is what I've got written down.
Yeah.
That includes, you said the heated seats were extra?
Heated seats are optional. I can't remember the price of the heated seat.
But that price includes panniers, doesn't it?
Yeah, includes panniers, yeah.
And it's keyless, because I was going to move on to sort of an issue that we did have. I was thinking about any kind of problems that we've had throughout the sort of the few weeks we've had this. But
it's keyless ignition. That it also does the fuel filler cap and the panniers. We had an issue with the panniers. Just the key wasn't recognising the thing in the panniers. We haven't taken it back to Yamaha to be fixed, or the Yamaha said it's an easy fix and they would have done it. I haven't needed to, because you can open the panniers manually so easily. It's just, for me, a 2-hour round trip back to Yamaha to get it fixed. I don't use the panniers that often. Again, it's one of those things. Just be aware, if something doesn't work, just go back to the dealer.
Well, it's good. There's a huge great dealer network as well, isn't there? It's very easy for them to override something like that.
Again, and this is on the GT Plus only. It's got, I can't remember the text. It's got a super duper drive chain that's supposed to be very long. I think BMW were the first to use this on some of their bikes a couple of years ago. It's a super heavy duty. Apparently, rarely needs adjusting. It makes you more attractive to women. All the best drive chains do. And that's important because this is a touring bike. We can't help but think about it as an MT-09, and it grew from being an MT-09 to an MT-09 with a fairing to an MT-09 with more touring goodies. This is now a touring bike. It's a chain-driven touring bike rather than shaft-driven touring bike. But most of its rivals, the Versys 1100, the GSX, GX, the CB1000 GT, they're all chain drive. I've done 1,400 miles on this bike. I haven't adjusted the chain yet. I haven't needed to adjust the chain yet. And that's 1,400 miles in winter. Pretty impressive.
Especially cold winter. Also centre stand, worth mentioning too, for those that like centre stands and adjusting chains and oiling chains.
And the other two bits of tech I think really worth talking about. The headlights, this and the GT have got the Matrix headlights. On this and the GT, I think they're camera controlled on this and not on the GT. Mm-hmm. The standard one has got cornering lights, but not the Matrix lights. The Matrix lights is the thing where it kind of detects things coming the other way, switches on and off, tilts up and down, and you can see when you look at the lights, there are kind of lenses pointing in all directions on there. You don't necessarily see the effect they're having on other drivers. You're glad you're not blinding other drivers, and you're being a wonderful citizen. In terms of how good they are, I mean, these lights on main beam they're fantastic. They are, you would expect so, but they're by far and away the best headlights on any bike I've used. They're just really long throw, nice wide beam. The cornering element, as you lean, you can see them switch on and switch off. Doesn't add a huge amount, and on a really fast run, which it probably doesn't throw quite far enough into the distance. But compared to every other bike I've ridden, they're just absolutely great.
Let me ask about economy as well. I know you're good for an MPG, a very accurate MPG figure. Well, with all the miles you have done on it, and a lot of those have been long runs in any one stint. Where are we at MPG wise?
It's kind of high 50s, low 60s. Is it real MPG on the motorway? Drops to kind of high 40s, low 50s. On the, I'd say I've only done a few real kind of fun runs on it, but that was about 48, and on the motorway it's about 58, which means it's typically just over 200 miles to a tank. It's pretty good. I think I can't remember a 17-litre tank or 18-litre tank.
Yeah, but it's over 200, about 200 miles. You say. Yeah. Tell me a bit more about this Y-AMT. We used it on an MT-09, didn't we, last year? And I kind of got used to it a bit, and now I don't know. I've not made a decision whether I would have it or. Obviously, it is. You can only buy the GT Plus with the Y-AMT, can't you? Yeah. You don't have the option of a manual gearbox. I don't know whether I'm at that either at the stage of life or the stage of motorcycling is correlating with that. But I don't know. I liked it. It's very, very easy. Like you said earlier on, it's like a maxi scooter, but really powerful.
I've now done probably about 3,000 miles on Y-AMT on the MT-09 and MT-07, and this. I still got the same verdict as I had last year when we did the MT-09, which is I think it's a really good system. I think there are times when it's great. I really like it in manual mode. Manual mode, I can't imagine why anybody would still want to change gear with their feet, having changed gear with their hands and giving themselves the time to get used to it.
Yeah.
You need a week to acclimatise. If it was £1,000 option, if I was going to buy a Tracer 9 GT, I wouldn't pay £1,000 to have it. I'd spend my £1,000 on a top box heated seat and a lot of things before I choose Y-AMT, because changing gear with a clutch and your foot is not difficult. It doesn't offer enough. That's the point. And the other thing I noticed with this, which was really interesting, because this is a bigger, wider, slightly more clumsy bike than the MT-09 that we rode it on. When you're filtering, when you're at low speeds with this, I found the Y-AMT much more intrusive on this. I'm much more aware of it than I was when I was riding the MT-09. There's no reason for that, because I wasn't necessarily going in a different speed. I think it's just that the bars are wider. You're aware. You're thinking of many more things when you're filtering on something like this, and so somehow you're just aware of everything. And I just found that, particularly in auto mode, it was changing up and down, and it's really clunky when it changes up and down at low revs. Yeah. Which obviously when you're filtering, that's what you tend to be doing. And I just didn't like the fact that I couldn't slip the clutch when I'm filtering. It felt one bit of control removed too far. In manual mode, it's better because again, you're deciding when to change gear, but you still can't slip the clutch. And there is still that little thing of doing U-turns. When we were putting this bike on here earlier, just trying to maneuver a bike without a clutch on wet grass. It's sometimes you want a bit more finesse than it gives you, because it comes with it and you don't have a choice. I just have it and love it, and I get used to it, and it's fine. And in manual mode, genuinely, it's so good. It's just on a twisty road, it's just the ability to be able to change gear while let over, knowing that you've also got traction control, lean angles, that lens sensitive, and all the other gizmos that you should. We all know, yes, children, please don't change gear in the corner, but sometimes you do. Sometimes you want to. Sometimes you need to. Sometimes you just, because we're humans, and you can do it because you just go what's, and
it's too easy.
There's none of this.
Yeah.
It's just great.
You're not shifting your weight either. It makes it a lot easier.
Yeah.
Less time consuming. I looked on the internet for some sort of a commentary or thoughts, or if people have got particular concerns over the bike. And they're predominantly, I kept saying weight. 232 kilos is what it weighs. I didn't ever think, well, this is really heavy.
No, it's it.
Do we class it as a middleweight sports tourer? Is there a class for it? We've talked about rivals a little bit, but all right, let me just ask you, is it too heavy?
No, I don't think it's too heavy at all. And it certainly doesn't feel top heavy. It doesn't feel difficult. Weight's not just about the number, is it? It's about how the bike carries stuff. Yeah. And I think the standard Tracer 9 is 217. So by the time you've added the panniers and the Y-AMT, and that's the difference between that. So 217 for the Tracer 9, I think 232 for this.
For this, with all its extras.
I don't think the off the top of my head, I don't think the Kawasaki, the Suzuki, the Honda rivals are particularly any lighter than that.
I don't think so.
Not massively, at least. Despite the fact it's quite a tall seat, I thought it carries the weight really well.
As a practical, versatile, multifunction, one bike only in your garage thing, it does, I hate the expression, but I'm going to use it, ticks all the boxes.
Yeah.
Because it does, doesn't it? And like you were saying, with the engine performance and character, with the power that it has, with the comfort, with the touring ability, with the weather protection, with the electronics, I feel like this is becoming a Yamaha advert. But despite all that, and I said that as soon as I got off the bike after my first big journey on it, I couldn't help but feel a little bit underwhelmed, because I really liked that engine and I really did feel comfortable and there was nothing to complain about. But I still felt like there was something almost visceral. Like,
I know what you mean, and I think it's partly, and I hadn't realised until we had the bike a week or so. This is Yamaha's top of the range motorbike right now. This is, in terms of now the R1's gone.
mm-hmm.
This is the most expensive, the most tech laden. This is their absolute flagship, because we've grown up with the MT-09 and the Tracer 9 at a time when it wasn't the flagship. I think I see it as an over-spec'd MT-09, and that's unfair to it, because it's a much better bike than that. I can't fault it. It does everything I want it to do. It's evolved slightly. The tech's got better. Things like the clocks. I don't even remember the previous generation.
Oh, the twin
clocks. Yamaha listen and learn, and everything's it's got all the kit on it that I want. That kit works really well. The radar stuff on this, Yamaha's first radar works as well as BMW stuff. The Y-AMT works far better than BMW's semi-auto. All the tech is really good. The one thing I have got about it, and this is a really personal thing, this isn't my opinion on this doesn't matter to all the people out there. I don't like the looks very much. The panniers don't help.
Yeah.
And the panniers, they're not the prettiest panniers, and it's a very wide bike because of them. And it just, for me, I wouldn't have the panniers. I'd have a top box. There's something about the front end, as functional as it is and as good as it is, that for me, my generation, my history with bikes, my ideas of what make a good looking bike is not this, as functional as it is.
When I was doing said research, the other comment other than weight was looks, but of course it's personal. There's a lot going on the front there, isn't it? I think a lot of people were talking specifically about the front, about when you've got the radar, you've got the adjustable screen, which of course needs the space, and you've got the matrix light set up, and then it's almost like it's got broad shoulders, doesn't it? Here,
yeah,
they're integrated, aren't they? The indicators are up here. Colour-wise, I don't know what they call it. It's icon blue. There you are. That's what they call it, don't they? But it's only a tiny little bit of blue in there. Blue, grey and black. Again, I was worried when we're coming out here to film. That's partly why I chose red, because it's just going to blend into a grey, dark background.
I don't mind that at all. My kind of days of flash colour schemes are generally gone. It's a good bike, and I think if you like the way it looks, and £16,000 is affordable to you, and you want a bike with all that tech on it, I was trying to work out, if you wanted all this tech, what were the other alternatives? And unless you go kind of down the GS route, which is a very different bike to this, the closest one I could think of was probably the R1300 RS, which I think is available with all that tech.
Sure.
Nothing like as comfortable. The screen on the RS is a lot smaller. The whole kind of weather protection is nothing like as good. But you can probably get an RS with all that kit. I haven't priced it up. I suspect it'd be about 18-ish.
I think I think it'd start with a 2. I think it'd be in the 20s. I think just by the time you've got what's on here on that. Yeah.
And the PCP deal on this at the moment, where we're filming this February 26th.
I can tell you.
Thing is, $4.5 deposit was about 160 quid a month on 3 years.
Yeah, that's exactly. Yeah, £4,000 deposit equals just £170 for over a 3-year deal. All right, so you're going to have a succinct, wordy review on BikeSocial, aren't you? Alongside this video. Good.
Yeah.
Happy?
Happy.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks for watching.
John, are you going to deliberately walk through the background? Because that'd be quite cool. I'll do the intro now. Michael was going to walk back in a second as well.
Oh no, he's coming the other way.
Oh, here's Shuey. Right.